Hello, I'm Melissa Fassel Dunn and welcome to Broad Appeal, a show about boss women and queen bees where we feature inspirational women who are writing and living by their own rules. And today we are interviewing Suzanne Lombardi. Suzanne lives right here in Milton, and she is the owner of The Plate at Milton Marketplace and The Plate at Lower Mills. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Do you have any cookies?
I always bring cookies. That's part of being successful.
Part of the deal, too.
It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
People, I don't know if they expect it, but I always do it.
I think they might now.
There you go.
So like a lot of women featured on our show, you didn't start in the culinary business. So can you tell us about your art degree?
I didn't start as a cook or a chef. In fact, one of the first female chefs I worked for also didn't have a culinary degree. So it's one of the things that sort of made me feel better about that for myself. I went to art school. I mean, it was the only thing I was really good at. Yeah. And
you probably loved it?
I loved it, and it was creative, and I wasn't super book smart, but I just, was creative. So went to art school, found my people, right? Like most people do when they go and study something they love. And I started working in kitchens as a student to earn money and quickly fell in love with that. So
that's incredible and not unusual. You know, it's like
I
the
don't
side
think
gig.
So.
The side gig so often turns into the main gig. And you have a sculpting degree, right?
I studied sculpture. I have a degree in sculpture and art history. Yes.
Do you still do anything with that, or is your creativity now in food?
Yeah, it's definitely in the food.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think I was the super good arts and crafts mom too.
Oh,
so,
nice.
It sort of came naturally. But,
you were that mom.
But no, I mean, working in the kitchen is, and certainly, I am in the kitchen. So I still get to have my hands in everything, and it's part of what I love to do.
And it can be so creative.
It is totally creative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also a misnomer because I think, young people go to culinary school and they think it's all going to be that. And so much of, running a restaurant or, being a private chef or anything like that is there's so many other pieces to the business to make it successful. But
right.
I've had a couple businesses, and the larger they got, the less I was doing what I love to do, and the more I was doing sort of sitting and having to do office work, which is not my favorite.
Right.
And when that happened, I was able to sort of recreate myself and stay where I'm happiest. So.
Yeah, which is so nice. And it's interesting. I was reading about all the things that you've done, and you've sort of meandered down this really interesting and fun path. And it kind of I almost envy it a little bit. It's neat what you've done. So you're the genius behind the Dancing Deer Baking Company. And I shared my experience with that before we talked. And
right.
For me, back in the early 2000s when I used to treat myself to that. It was so delicious and fun, and it was so neat to hear that was you. So how did you start with that? That was your first business?
It was,
yeah.
And I love the fact that I don't own any part of that company anymore, but I love that it's still around.
Yeah.
And I do hear stories like yours all the time, so I love that as well. But I was in California. I was just married at the time, and my husband Andy had a project out there that lasted a couple years. So that was the late 80s, early 90s. I had left a great job working as an assistant with the editor at the Boston Globe at the time. And
this was a food editor?
She became the editor. When I worked for her, she was a writer, Cheryl Julian. She's awesome and a really good friend still. She did the Boston Globe magazine piece, which everybody remembers,
yes,
I think.
Absolutely.
So I used to test all those recipes, prop style. So once a week, I would show up at the photographer's studio with ingredients and sort of half-cooked food. And we would spend the day like cooking and styling and
Kind of sounds like a dream
it
job.
was a dream
and
job.
This is the job you had to leave when you went to California.
But everything sort of runs its course, and timing is everything. So at the time, artisan bread baking was just starting to sort of blossom in this country. And I thought, if I'm going to go to California, I want to learn to bake bread.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that, I tried to get a bread baking job, but they were overnight jobs and, mostly men. And the Italian company I went to work for said, I don't see that working out. My Spanish was bad. And so I ended up working in their bakery. But it's a long story. I'm making this a long story. But long story short, I also, before I had a full-time job, hung around in the neighborhood where we lived with a guy who was roasting coffee. And, literally like the bags of beans. And
back when it all first started.
This was pre-Starbucks.
Okay, so this is huge.
It was huge and exciting and interesting, and I love coffee, and I was tasting coffee like I had never tasted it, right? So I thought, I knew that everything that starts out west heads east eventually.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be great to bake food that really complemented and was as carefully sort of cared for as these coffee
and worthy
roasters.
Worthy of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my sort of naive young idea. And then I came back to the East Coast and I started baking for a woman who had 2 coffee houses, again, pre-Starbucks.
Right.
And I was baking out of my house, which was completely illegal, and you're not supposed to do that now as well. And then I quickly rented space from a caterer. I would go in at night. She was there in the day. I would bake. I would pack everything into the back of my station wagon and deliver it the next morning. So it was super fun, and I loved it.
It sounds exhausting also.
It was exhausting, but my life is still exhausting.
Yes.
So there must be something about it.
When we're passionate about things, they are exhausting. It kind of comes with it, right?
Yeah, well, and it also becomes a lifestyle, So that's
Absolutely.
sort of what it was. But and then eventually I got, I had to get my own facility, and I took on a partner. And,
and it got bigger and bigger, and eventually you sold it.
I sold my shares in 2000,
right.
Right around the time my daughter was born, Ruby, and we had grown it to a place where we were distributing. We were like really one of the first people distributing all natural baked goods nationwide. And we won all kinds of awards at these food shows, and
I bet
I learned a ton about business doing that. So
the business side, which you had prior to that probably not known a ton about.
Nothing.
Yeah. And so you stopped with this endeavor, and then you went to another endeavor, the Tiny Trapeze, and that's candy.
Tiny Trapeze Confections. I had, through Dancing Deer, we also partnered with Whole Foods Market, was a big vendor of ours. So I got to know...
I've heard of them.
Yeah. I got to know a lot of people in that company and really, appreciated what they were doing with the grocery store.
Right.
And when I was thinking about sort of what to do next, I knew that it was a category within their stores. The all-natural candy category was very undeveloped. So it really was it really came out of the, the idea about sort of where's the void in that natural market.
Where's a natural place? Yeah, what can I do to fill it? And
then I just loved the idea of doing it in an artisanal way, which is how Dancing Deer started. So I looked up a old-time candy maker in Rockport, Mass, and went down and visited him, and he thought I was crazy. But I just spent 2 days sort of, assisting him, and he had just some of this amazing, original, antique boardwalk taffy-like machinery in his store. And I went to New York and bought some of that stuff, and started from there.
And there it was.
Yeah, and just had to figure out how to use it and make candy that would work. And I mean, the cool thing is, like my daughter will say, Google it, Mom, if you don't know how to do it. And it's really, I mean, I read books and found old books with sort of formulas from the early 1900s, and literally that's how we developed products.
So much fun. And are you still working on that a little bit as a side gig, or are you not working with that anymore?
I did some consulting for some, candy makers like myself who are, super interested in it
Google
too.
It.
But yeah, exactly.
You told them to Google it.
That, and I helped them, a little bit with what I knew. But it's amazing what you can.
It's so neat.
Teach yourself to do.
How you've done so many things. And so, what's your all-time favorite thing to bake? You love to bake. You love to cook.
I love to do it all. I do. But baking sometimes can de-stress me a little bit. So I do find myself in the pastry part of our kitchen a lot.
Yeah.
I love to do like buttermilk biscuits, things that are sort of physical but still need a really light
and kind of
touch.
Old school. Yeah.
And very old school.
Yeah.
Like in the South, they'll say she has a good biscuit hand, which means, she's got the right touch. Like they can eat a biscuit and know if it was produced sort of in a way by somebody who, has that sort of right touch.
Right. So you have it.
I guess I constantly try to achieve it, but I love to bake biscuits. And I love to eat them with house-made strawberry jam.
I'm sure. I kind of would like to eat one right now. So what is your favorite thing on your menu? I'm sure it kind of changes because you're always trying new things and doing different things.
Yeah, and we change our menu with the season, which I think we certainly as cooks appreciate that because, just when you get sick of root vegetables,
they're gone.
They're gone, and it's springtime.
Right.
So right now we're getting. Well, we were looking at this salad earlier. We're getting awesome greens from Brookwood Farm. Judy Lieberman from 12 Moon Farm gives us pea tendrils. So this is
it looks like there's some flowers in here as well.
Some edible flowers. Yeah. So what the farms do is marigold leaves and other edible flowers that they're growing, they'll pick them and mix them in with their greens. I mean, again,
beautiful.
Speaking of people who are, passionate about what they do and take the extra time and care.
Yeah.
That's why we love our local farmers. So this is a farmer's market hummus plate, we call it. We've got a black bean hummus, unusual but really delicious red lentil roasted carrot hummus. Local greens.
And these radishes. Can you tell me about these? Because they're such an unusual shape.
Yeah, so those are French breakfast radishes. Okay. And you can tell because they always have that oblong shape. And it's good for this plate because you can pick them up and sort of swipe them through the hummus. Carrots and just this nice sesame flatbread crackers.
It looks
fantastic. It's light,
but sort of filling too because you got the hummus. I mean, it would be good for lunch.
Yeah, definitely. And in this warm weather, it's just a nice way to eat doesn't leave you too heavy and full.
And so nice right now with the locally sourced.
It's great. I mean, the farmers come in the back door in their muck boots, and everyone sort of gets excited. Like, what are they bringing? And we taste and look, and it's definitely a highlight of this time of year for us in the kitchen, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So now that we know about all the good food and what your favorite things are, what do you think what is the secret to being a successful woman restaurant/business owner? What's your secret? Do you have more than one? Are there none?
Well, I mean, we sort of touched on it before. I mean, it's it's a lot of work, and it's
not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you run your own business, there has to be, you have to be sort of authentic, right? You have to figure out who you are, what's your point of view,
what your values are,
what your values are, what's important to you, and how to keep yourself enjoying it every day. So that's definitely a part of it. I mean, I don't know. I have a good work ethic, I guess. So I've always worked hard and, you know, tried to learn as much as I can and know as much as I can about what I do.
Almost like continuing education.
Yeah,
like
but you know, there's still things that I think we can do better, do more of, and you know, it's so much about what running a successful business is. You know, a little bit about the food, but a lot about, you know, just making the numbers work so you can afford to pay people a decent wage and you know, afford to work with local vendors and
have that quality.
Yeah, exactly.
That quality food. So not only do you own the 2 plate locations, but you also have additional offerings beyond just a really good cup of coffee and a really delicious snack. So what are the other things you're doing?
The really awesome thing about opening up at the marketplace was, we have tables now for people to sit in the winter.
And it's beautiful in there. It's bright, but it's still warm because there's the brick. It's very pleasant. And you get that outdoor view that you have in the back. It's so pretty.
I'm glad. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has all of that. And so it's a nice space to work in as well. But at night, that space really transforms really beautifully. So we just finished our 2nd season of culinary classes, and those are super fun. So
what kind of people go, and how often are they?
We were running. They're online, so you can sign up and pay for them online. They'll start up again the end of September. This year we kicked off our culinary season with a wine social that was super fun. So we sold tickets. We put out a spread. We had, you know, delicious local wine and beer. We had recipe cards for people who liked what they were eating to take home. They wanted to entertain their friends.
Sounds really well organized and thought out.
It was well organized and just a lot of fun. So, and it became, you know, super noisy, but just something about the end of September, like everyone's kids were settled into school and people were back from the summer, and it was a great way to kick it off. And of course, we, you know, had our season up for people who are interested in what was running when.
Right.
We also do private classes, so for a minimum of 8 people, and we did probably half a dozen this year. Super fun. So we had a group of office workers around the holiday. They usually go out, you know, for dinner, but instead they came. So every time you take a class, you get welcomed with wine or beer. It's very casual. And then you always get fed at the end. So
there's so many good things about it. And you learn how to make something.
And you learn how to make something. Right. Jeannie Burns, who's our culinary ed director, is also a local Milton great lady. And so we teach mostly together. We did have some guest chefs come in. So we're gonna start planning next fall season in a couple weeks.
Do you have any?
We're doing a seafood class, so we always give out a survey, like, what are you interested, like, what would you be interested in learning, you know? So we're doing a seafood class, which I'm really excited about, because people get nervous or don't know how to cook fish or...
Yeah, it is. Well, it's one of those things that's really easy to mess up, I think.
And
it
you
feels
always,
easy to mess up.
And
Maybe
you
it's
always
not.
feel like if you know, the best compliment for us is when I'll meet somebody either in the restaurant or downstairs in the market who will say, "Oh my God, I made the red Egyptian lentil soup the other day for company, and it was fantastic,
tremendous."
So when people actually use the recipes, it's great. But the private classes are really fun. I mean, we usually leave a little bit more time, for people to eat at the end and socialize, because that's what they're getting together for. We've had someone do a bridal shower.
I was going to say, it'd be fun with like a girls' night too. It would be a blast, just getting a bunch of women together to drink wine and cook. And
we've done that a lot.
Yeah,
and then
sounds
just
like
the
fun.
regular classes, like friends will sign up, 3 of them, 4 of them.
Right.
So the max is a good class is, any more than 12 gets a little out of hand,
Yeah.
but 12 is a good number.
Yeah.
But for a minimum of 8, you can book a private class. We have done some socials. We're doing a private event there tomorrow night for 60.
Wow.
So it's a great space. And I also am looking for other creative people who may have some ideas to use it on a semi-permanent basis once a month, every 2 weeks.
Right, because it is such a nice space.
Exactly.
It's kind of a shame to let it
And there's
not
plenty
be
of
used.
parking at night,
Right.
and it's locally sort of
Accessible.
located, accessible.
Yeah.
And we love meeting creative people too, so we can collaborate as well.
It sounds like, it's so funny because even talking to you now that I know that you came from this art background, I can completely see it by the way, you want to work with creative people, you want to be creative with the food, you want to be careful with the food. It's interesting to see how that has come through. And we were talking about, at the beginning before we started recording about how, for kids these days going into college, how it's nice to get into something that you enjoy, but doesn't necessarily mean that that's the thing you're going to do for the rest of your life. Yet it still weaves its way through. This artistic thing is really weaving its way through your life.
Yeah, I think it's tough for 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds to sort of feel like they need to know.
Yeah.
And I do feel lucky that I've had the opportunity to kind of reinvent myself and lead a team of people who are, and sort of set a vision and let other people really contribute to that. Because, I am not the person that does everything that happens at, the plate and both locations.
Right.
So, I also enjoy that, like working with a team of people who have ideas that are complementary.
And it's so nice that you take them instead of dictating.
Well, I think that's a very female thing.
Yes.
And I think, I think it's a super positive thing that women have.
Yeah.
So
being able to learn and accept and
and collaborate and not
That's the word I was
feel
looking for.
threatened by somebody else who has great ideas or
I think so too. Well, thank you so much. Now that we know all these delicious things and how we can learn to cook more delicious things, and we saw this beautiful salad, we're gonna have a drink. So listen to our cocktail section and learn how to make something delicious. Hey everybody, we are back with Broad Appeal, and we are doing a special field trip today where we're making our drink in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. So it's kind of the ultimate break. We're gonna make a white wine spritzer, which is perfect for vacations because it's a little bit fancy, but also super easy. So what we have here are 4 ingredients. We have a half a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice. We have a half an ounce of elderflower liqueur. We have about 4 ounces of a dry white wine, so like a Pinot Grigio or a Sauvignon Blanc will work great. And we're gonna top it off with some seltzer water or soda water. It's about 2 ounces or so. So this is super easy. We have a glass of ice. I'm gonna add all the ingredients. Stir it super gently because you don't want to deflate those bubbles. And we have a little mint in our garden, so I'm going to garnish it with some mint. And get the bug out of our face. Have a little taste. Absolutely delicious, super refreshing, and again, super easy. Thanks for joining us today.
So my great tip for you, any of you mathematical challenged people as I am, is the Kitchen Pro app. I have it on my phone. I'm in the restaurant. I have a delicious recipe that I've developed to feed 8, but I now want to feed 60. So this will help you add fractions. It gives you equivalents and weights. It's really, it's my go-to. I couldn't live without it.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for that great tip, because I know, I think I mentioned to you that sometimes I've got 8 people coming over and I either have way too much sangria or not enough sangria.
You're gonna love this.
I need this app.
Okay.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
So tell us thank you again for talking to us about everything today. If people want to book an event with you or check out some of your classes, how can they do that?
Yes, so the website is theplatekitchen.com.
Okay.
There is a place on the site to look at all of our seasonal menus, learn a little bit more about us, look for classes, and then there's an info button where they can send an email, ask a question.
Fantastic.
Or just come in, I'm there every day. And
Or
ask
that.
For, or that. That's always
That's
easy.
also an option. Okay, great. Thank you again for joining us. And thank you everybody for joining us today and for learning more about The Plate and Suzanne. For more information, visit broadappealtv.com.